Welcome to Battleforge Legends, the YouTube channel dedicated to in-depth explorations of historic battles, heroic tales, and the tragedies of world wars. If you're passionate about military history, brilliant strategies, and fatal mistakes, this is the place for you. Today we're diving into a lesser-known but incredibly dramatic chapter of World War II Operation Gallop. This wasn't just a failed offensive by the Soviet Red Army. It's a testament to the irony of history, where ambition can turn victory into disaster. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss the high-quality content from Battleforge Legends. Let's rewind to the winter of 1943, when World War II was at its peak on the Eastern Front. After the historic victory at Stalingrad, where the Soviet Red Army encircled and destroyed the German Sixth Army, capturing over 200,000 prisoners, a wave of optimism swept across the Soviet Union. This was not just a military triumph, it was a symbol of hope. Millions of Red Army soldiers, from peasant boys to battle-hardened officers, believed the end of the war was near. Picture yourself as Sergeant Ivan Morozov, an ordinary Russian soldier sitting in a freezing trench, penning a letter home to your mother in a distant village. "Dear Mother," he writes, "I promise I'll be in Berlin by this summer. We're advancing like the wind, and the fascists are running in chaos." These words weren't mere fantasy. After Stalingrad, the Red Army launched a massive counter-offensive, recapturing towns and cities at breakneck speed. From Volgograd to Rostov, Soviet units advanced hundreds of kilometers in just weeks. Reports flooded into the Kremlin. "We've liberated Krasnodar. We're pushing toward Donetsk." Stalin, the supreme leader, along with generals like Georgy Zhukov and Nikolai Vatutin, believed the war could end in 1943. "We will crush the Germans before spring arrives," Stalin declared in a secret meeting. Operation Gallop was born from this confidence. It was part of a larger plan to liberate the entire Don River basin, from Kursk in the north to the Sea of Azov in the south. The ambitious goal: trap and destroy hundreds of thousands of German troops, sever their railway and supply lines, and push straight toward Dnipropetrovsk and Mariupol. If successful, the Red Army could advance deep into Ukraine, directly threatening Romania and Hungary, Hitler's fragile allies. Stalin envisioned a decisive blow to end the war early, saving millions of lives and securing the Soviet Union's position at the post-war negotiating table. But to understand the full picture, we must look at the German situation at the time. The Wehrmacht, the once invincible war machine, was in a state of exhaustion and chaos after the Stalingrad debacle. The Hungarian and Italian contingents, auxiliary forces, had completely collapsed. Tens of thousands of Hungarian soldiers fled in panic, abandoning weapons and positions. The Italians, unaccustomed to Russia's brutal cold, crumbled like dominoes. The regular German forces were depleted, short on tanks, fuel, and morale. From his headquarters in Rastenburg, Hitler received dire reports. "Our troops are retreating in disarray. No safe withdrawal routes remain." This was the golden opportunity for the Soviets, or so they thought. But history is full of surprises, and Operation Gallop would prove that hope can sometimes be the greatest enemy. The Soviet offensive and initial successes. Now let's dive into the heart of the campaign. General Nikolai Vatutin, one of the Red Army's most talented commanders, was tasked with leading the Southwestern Front. With 325,000 elite troops equipped with over 500 T-34 tanks, fearsome steel beasts, Vatutin launched the offensive on January 29, 1943. The Germans were in disarray, hastily retreating after Stalingrad, and the timing seemed perfect. "We will strike when the enemy is weakest," Vatutin declared to his officers. The initial victories were nothing short of spectacular, stunning the world. The 1st Guards Army, the most elite unit, crossed the Oder River under intense German fire. They crushed the 19th Panzer Division, a once famed German tank unit, in mere hours of fierce combat. Soviet soldiers armed with Mosin-Nagant rifles charged into battle shouting "Ura," the traditional battle cry. Towns like Krasny Liman and Kremenaya fell quickly. In just 3 days, the Red Army advanced over 50 kilometers, reclaiming lands held by the Germans for 2 years. Stalin, receiving reports from the front, smiled with satisfaction. "Keep going, don't stop," he ordered over the red telephone. But the real driving force behind the victory was the 4th Guards Tank Corps, led by General Pavel Poluboyarov. This was a breakthrough unit equipped with upgraded T-34 tanks, highly mobile even on snow-covered terrain. They penetrated deep into German rear lines, covering 85 kilometers in a single day, a record even the Wehrmacht respected. Imagine the scene: hundreds of tanks roaring across snowy fields, artillery booming, and German soldiers scattering in panic. Poluboyarov didn't just capture ground, he severed the Dnipropetrovsk-Mariupol railway, the lifeline of German logistics. Without this railway, German Panther and Tiger tanks would run dry, and their soldiers would lack ammunition. The Red Army's morale soared. "We'll be in Berlin before the flowers bloom," one soldier wrote in his diary. For a deeper look, let's talk about Vatutin's tactics. He employed the Soviet deep battle doctrine, where tank units didn't pause to consolidate but plunged straight into the enemy's rear. The Popov Mobile Group, a special task force, was assigned to advance toward Pavlograd, over 100 kilometers from the starting line. They crossed the Samara River, defeating weak German defensive units. Within a week, the Red Army recaptured Rostov-on-Don, a strategic city, and pushed the German army group south, westward. Soviet newspapers trumpeted, "The Red Army is unstoppable." Even in the West, analysts like Winston Churchill acknowledged the Soviets are changing the course of the war. But behind these victories, cracks were forming, mistakes that would lead to disaster. Soviet strategic mistakes and the German opportunity. Despite the early successes, Operation Gallop was plagued by fatal strategic errors. The first was logistics. The Red Army's supply lines were stretched too far. From the initial front to the new positions, distances reached 200-300 kilometers over snow-covered, damaged roads. Fuel trucks got stuck in mud, ammunition didn't arrive on time. Soldiers were exhausted, lacking hot food, and even the mighty T-34 tanks needed fuel to operate. Generals like Vatutin and Poluboyarov warned Stalin, "We need to pause and consolidate." But Stalin, with his authoritarian streak, brushed them off. "Advance faster, deeper. The enemy is weak. Don't let them breathe," he commanded. The ambition to end the war early clouded reason. On the other side, Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, dubbed the Old Wolf of the Wehrmacht, saw through it all. Manstein, a strategic genius who orchestrated the conquest of France in 1940, recognized the Red Army's overextension as a golden opportunity. "They're digging their own grave," he told his officers. Manstein devised a mobile defense plan, which he called "Strike Back to Strike Again." Instead of rigid defense, the Germans would retreat strategically, luring the Red Army deeper, then counterattack to cut off their flanks. The plan aimed to turn Soviet ambition into a catastrophe, leveraging terrain and elite units like the SS divisions. But the German situation was dire. Soviet tanks advanced to within 60 kilometers of Hitler's headquarters in Zaporozhye. Hitler, obsessed with no retreat, refused to withdraw, creating a deadlock for Manstein's plan. In a tense meeting in Berlin, Hitler shouted, "No retreat. We must hold Manstein patient," but resolute argued, "Mein Führer, retreat is for a greater victory." Finally, news of Soviet tanks closing in forced Hitler to relent. This was a pivotal moment. History could have shifted if Hitler had been more stubborn. To dig deeper, let's analyze Manstein's vision. He knew the Wehrmacht, though weakened, still had qualitative advantages. New Tiger tanks with 80 ml guns that could pierce T-34s from a distance, and fanatical SS divisions like Leibstandarte and Das Reich. Manstein reorganized Army Group South, concentrating forces at key points like Kharkov. He predicted the Red Army would exhaust itself due to long supply lines, and that's when he'd strike. "War is the art of deception," Manstein later wrote in his memoirs. And he deceived Stalin. The German turnaround. With Hitler's approval, Manstein acted swiftly. He turned panic into opportunity, repositioning German forces, pulling weaker units to the rear, and deploying elite units to the front. The counterattack erupted on February 19, 1943, targeting the Red Army's right flank. The SS Viking Division and 7th Panzer Division charged, turning the town of Krasnoyarmeyskoye into a deadly trap. This was a classic battle. The Germans used a pincer tactic, attacking from both sides to cut off Soviet supply lines. Poluboyarov's corps, which had advanced like a storm, was now completely isolated. Without fuel or ammunition, they became easy targets. The fighting was brutal. German MG-42 machine guns roared, T-34 tanks burned under Tiger fire. Soviet soldiers fought to their last breath, but it was futile. "We're surrounded," an officer reported to headquarters. Operation Gallop collapsed in a flash. The Popov mobile group was wiped out in just 48 hours. Thousands of soldiers killed or captured. The 6th Army, 25th Tank Corps, and 1st Guards Army disintegrated. Over 100,000 casualties with 20,000 dead and hundreds of tanks destroyed. These cold numbers hide human tragedies, soldiers fleeing through snow, freezing at 20 degrees or taken prisoner. Sergeant Ivan Morozov, who dreamed of Berlin, likely fell somewhere in the Ukrainian fields. Manstein didn't stop. He pressed the counterattack, retaking Slavyansk and pushing the Red Army back to the Donets River. This was one of the greatest turnarounds in military history, from the brink of defeat to a lightning victory. Nay, consequences and historical lessons. The Soviet disaster was profound and painful. Their forces were decimated. From 325,000 troops, only half remained combat ready. Equipment losses were staggering, over 600 tanks and thousands of artillery pieces. But the personal tragedies are what truly sting. Imagine soldiers abandoning burning tanks, running kilometers through freezing cold, many dying of exhaustion or hunted by German planes. Post-war reports describe soldiers digging snow shelters only to perish. Stalin, furious, blamed his generals, sparking an internal purge. For the Germans, this was a temporary but sweet victory. They reclaimed vast territories from Rostov to Kharkov and restored morale. Manstein even prepared for Operation Citadel at Kursk, but that's another story. The broader strategic impact, Gallop's failure extended Germany's survival by another year. Had the Soviets succeeded, Berlin might have fallen in 1944, not 1945. Stalin learned a costly lesson. He shifted tactics, opting for patient defense at Kursk, where the Red Army built 3 layers of fortifications, waiting for the Germans to attack before countering. This defeat also taught the Soviets about logistics, leading to improved supply systems and later victories like Operation Bagration in 1944. In conclusion, the irony of history. In summary, Operation Gallop, instead of destroying the Germans, inadvertently revived their army group south. The defeat taught the Soviets valuable lessons about flank protection logistics and cautious strategy. Manstein, with his innate genius, turned disaster into opportunity. But Germany's lack of resources meant the victory was fleeting. History is full of irony. Over-ambition can turn victory into defeat, and failure can lay the groundwork for greater success. Thank you for watching Battleforge Legends. If you enjoyed this video, please comment with your thoughts on Manstein or Stalin, and subscribe for more World War II content. We'll see you in the next video about the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history.